Good morning, or should I say good afternoon even. This picture, it's 1994, we're in the heart of 2nd edition Warhammer 40,000, and it's when I finally chose my first army. After the Marines and the Orcs and the starter box of Warhammer 40,000 didn't do anything for me, I chose the Eldar. Now, back then they were mostly in metal. This is a time before the Falcon Grab Tank and a time before the Viper jet bike, which wouldn't come out until 96 or 97. This is also a time when everything in the range was metal. The only thing in the range that wasn't was some plastic Guardians with las guns that came out later on. So, being and all, that's challenging in its own right, as at this particular time, Marines and, well, mostly Marines have been well catered for with the arrival of Codex Ultramarines in a year later. However, the Space Marine range was well represented already. The plastic Rhinos, plastic Land Raiders, and plastic 10-men tactical squads, which had come in the box. There's also one or two other plastic kits. I think there's a 6-man Marine plastic kit at that time, although that could have come out during the time of Codex Ultramarines. However, we're here to talk about Craftworld Eldar, or which would become Craftworld Eldar. This particular codex is the first Eldar Codex. There was no Eldar Codex before this. This introduced special characters for the Eldar, namely the Phoenix Lords and Eldrad Ufran of trying to remember which craft world he's from. Yurif, I think it is, if I remember rightly. Ulfway. Anyway, whilst I butcher Eldar names, Ulfway, yes. Back then, the Avatar was tiny. It's only literally in the last year or so that the Avatar has grown to the size of a greater demon. Back then, greater demons were quite small. They expanded them in size, but they did not keep up with the Avatar. The Avatar is the embodiment of a sacrifice to the Eldar gods, and Kingdom Menshikane presents a shard of itself as an avatar, which is a walking manifestation of fire and fury, and goes across the battlefield pretty much fighting for the Eldar. Now, the main spot which they seem to have really focused on these days are your Guardians, which are your rank and file Eldar. For some reason they painted these particular ones mostly in Ulfway, because at that time it was Ulfway, although these days it does seem to be Samhan. Not so much Bile-Tan. They did do some Bile-Tan, and back even further, Aleatok was the one that they did most of. I mean, most of these particular Eldar are all metal with plastic arms, or a complete metal sculpt. Now, I did play a lot of quite a few games under 2nd edition. The main annoyance was not having tanks at the time, until obviously the Prism tank, the Falcon Grab tank, and the Wave Serpent at the time. So the only vehicle we had access to at the time was the jet bike, and jet bikes just, I don't think they were really tough enough. I did get a Shrieker jet bike, which is a metal edition with a Shuriken cannon, but it just didn't make enough difference. I'm still not the biggest fan of jet bikes today, The nearest thing you had to tanks was the Waif Lord, which in this edition is called the Eldar Dreadnought. Now your HQs haven't changed a great deal over the years. You have had recent plastic releases after having to wait over 20 years for Jane Zar and Morgan Ra. There's only hoping that at some point we'll get Karandras, the Striking Scorpions. Now, Eldar Society had Guardians as your main defence force. However, if you want to follow a particular path, a bit like, I suppose, the path of the Shogun, etc., in our world, you had the most common, which was the Die Avenger, which was just a slightly souped up Guardian. Better ballistic skill, quite better accuracy. Then you had my personal favourite, although these do need resculpting, because these are ancient now, the Warp Spiders. Excellent. No Phoenix Lord, only Exarch. I'll explain about Exarchs in a minute. You had your Dark Reapers, which I had a few of these. I still have. The problem is, at this moment in time, I can't get to them. You had also, which are available in plastic now, the Howling Banshees. You had Shining Spears, which have been better represented, but in this edition you didn't have them. I don't think they came around until 3rd edition. Your Striking Scorpions, which are now in plastic, but I've heard complaints about them. The Fire Dragons, which are still in metal or fine cast, and another favourite of mine, the Swooping Hawks, which apparently are not that far off, but Valrak might be right, Valrak might not be right. It is one of those things. Now, also you've got Exarchs of the Eldar, because they could only devote so many pages in the Codex to heavy metal. The main lore hasn't changed much. They have got your Scouts, which have become souped up. You've got your Harlequins, which were part of the main Codex back in the day. You also had an entry for Exodites, which is quite a strange thing. Also in this edition you had vehicle cards. So here's your Eldar Dreadnought, which became a Waif Lord later on. And then there is your Samhan Eldar Warwalker, which again, they all got upgrades. These sculpts in this codex are old because they actually updated them, and I think they did a better job with the updates. The plastic ones now, as much as they're expensive, they are superior to the other ones. And then when they were metal, a metal jet bike, although the plastic jet bikes, we didn't have to wait too long for them. And I talk about the Viper jet bike here, but I didn't actually have a model at the time. Now, also, in your profiles of each of these things, we also had access to, but they never got any models, which is pretty common content, is Exodites. They only got Exodite Dragon Knights, which never came to be. Apparently they made them for Epic back in the day, but as you can see, very sort of, and also the John Blanche artwork is cannot be ignored. As rustic as it was, he did have the Grimdark was definitely Grimdark when John Blanche was concerned, and some that are no longer with us, as in no longer working for Games Workshop, is these lovely Mark Gibbons pictures, one of a Fire Dragon and one of a Swooping Hawk. Mark Gibbons' artwork was clean. It was very different to Blanche's artwork, and they did a hell of a lot of things. I mean, you've even got a whole thing through for Harlequins. Back then, you could have your Death Gesture, your Solitaire, the Great Harlequin, your Shadow Seer, and squads of Harlequins. Didn't need their own codex back then, and they don't really need their own codex now. The other thing as well is this codex would serve you for many years. As you can see, it's quite well worn. I'm quite happy to still have one of my first codexes in my possession. Back then, it was interesting to see the other codexes as they came out. Unfortunately, I did have a copy of Codex Ultramarines at one point, and sadly no longer do I have this. I thank you for going down memory lane, as second edition at the moment is, I believe, still quite a big thing. And thank you for joining me this morning, or should I say this afternoon even, but it could be morning where you are. So wherever you are, have a great day, and just take it at the time. There's always time for things most of the time. Anyway, this is 4046 out. Thank you very much for viewing my video. I'm going to do a slight sort of wail again. Please subscribe. All the subscribers already have. I'm very gratified to have, but there's always room for some more. Anyway, this is 4046